because of Madison, Ohio. Part 4. I don't know how long I sat there in my car, staring back at the hospital, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. But when my breathing finally slowed and my head cleared, the same terrible curiosity returned, gnawing at me like an itch I couldn't scratch. Whatever was in that basement, that creature lurking in the dark, it was only part of the story. I needed to know why it was there, who had put it there, and how much else had been hidden beneath Madison's quiet surface. I drove to the small motel on the edge of town. It was run down, almost empty, the kind of place where no one asked questions. The receptionist barely looked up as I signed in. I collapsed onto the bed, too exhausted to think, but as I drifted into an uneasy sleep, images of the creature's hollow eyes burned in my mind. That night, I dreamed of Madison, but it wasn't the Madison I'd seen. It was brighter, vibrant, the sidewalks filled with families, children playing in the park. But as I watched, shadows crept in from the edges, darkening the sky. The children disappeared one by one, their laughter replaced by a low, ominous hum. A fog rolled over the town, and from it, figures emerged, doctors in old-fashioned uniforms, their faces obscured by surgical masks stained with dark spots. Behind them, children were dragged, their eyes wide and blank, as they disappeared into the ground beneath the hospital. I awoke drenched in sweat, my heart racing. I knew what I had to do, as much as I hated it. If I wanted answers, I'd have to find someone who could tell me about that hospital's history, someone who knew the dark side of Madison better than any article or rumor. I drove to a small, dilapidated bar I'd passed on the way into town, a place where locals might gather, people who knew Madison's secrets. As I walked in, the patrons turned to look at me, their faces lined and wary, but I recognized one of them, the old man from the diner. He raised an eyebrow as I approached, clearly not pleased to see me again. "Back so soon?" he muttered, taking a long sip from his glass. "Yeah," I said, glancing round before lowering my voice. "I need to know what's really going on in that hospital." He didn't answer at first, just stared into his drink with an expression somewhere between anger and pity. Finally, he sighed. "I told you to leave, didn't I? But no, you had to go digging. Well, now you're in it, whether you like it or not." "What did they find in those tunnels?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He shook his head slowly. "Not what, who." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Who?" Then he leaned closer, his voice low and rough. "Back in the early 1900s, Madison was a booming town, thanks to the mines and factories. But there were accidents, lots of them, people disappearing, bodies found mangled beyond recognition. Folks started saying the land was cursed, but no one listened. They just built over it, kept digging. Then, the hospital was built on that burial ground, and that's when the real nightmare began." He paused, his eyes dark. The doctors, some of them were curious. They knew about the land's dark reputation, and instead of fearing it, they wanted to understand it. They started experiments, looking for ways to harness whatever it was that tainted the place. I shivered, recalling the creature I had seen. "What kind of experiments?" "Human ones," he said, grimly. "They took in patients, orphans, drifters, people who wouldn't be missed, and they did things to them. Unspeakable things. They wanted to create something, but what they ended up making was wrong. Abominations. And some of those things got loose. That's why the tunnels were sealed off. I felt my stomach turn. So they're still down there. He nodded. Some of them must have probably died, but a few, well, they're the ones you saw tonight. I imagine they're drawn to that hospital like it's some kind of magnet for everything dark and twisted. And it's not just them. Every so often, someone goes missing. A kid, a vagrant. They disappear, and no one asks too many questions. The weight of his words settled over me like a suffocating blanket. Why don't people leave? Why do they stay in Madison if they know all this? He let out a bitter laugh. Because we're trapped. Whatever's under this town, it doesn't let go. People try to leave, and they end up back here, like they're tethered to the blaze. Some who manage to get away well, let's just say they don't last long. Accidents, suicides, strange illnesses. Medicine has its hooks in us, and it doesn't like to let go. The room seemed to close in on me, the air thick with the stench of smoke and stale beer. And what about the witch? I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. The Madison witch, did she have something to do with this? The old man's face darkened. That's just another part of the curse. They say she was wrongfully hanged, a healer accused of witchcraft. She cursed the town with her dying breath, vowed that Madison would suffer until her spirit was avenged. People have claimed to see her in the courthouse at night, watching from the windows. I swallowed hard, my mind spinning. Madison wasn't just haunted, it was a breeding ground for evil. A place where darkness lived and thrived, feeding off the souls of those who dared to dig too deep. Do you have any idea how to stop it? I asked, though I could already guess his answer. He shook his head. No one can stop it. People have tried, but the town's roots go too deep, into things that aren't meant to be understood. I left the bar feeling hollow, the weight of the town pressing down on me. But one thought wouldn't leave my mind, a nagging urge that grew with every step. I had to go back.